Hello, and welcome back to Homework Hustle, the podcast for parents raising smart kids while juggling homework, hormones, and everything else in between. I'm Shubhada, the founder of Brinology, and I have with me here today Jaini Nandu. Jaini is a sports psychologist, and today we are going to delve into the very interesting topic of psychology of sports and managing performance. Jenny is an MSc in this field and she currently works with the Reliance Foundation. She works extensively with athletes right from grassroots level to elite athletes. So, Jenny, welcome.
Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction. I'm actually happy to be here to share my knowledge with all of you.
Thank you. So, let's start. And before we do, a quick pit stop, parents. Have you got our latest book, A Kid's Guide to Money? It's already a bestseller. So get your copy. And now, let's begin. So, Jenny, psychology. Okay, what is sports psychology?
So, basically, it's a specialized field that focuses on enhancing the performance of an athlete. So, we try and help athletes to reach their optimal performance level, as well as we also maintain their mental health while they are performing their sport. With that, we also try and understand how participation in sport, physical activity, or any form of exercise helps your psychological development, your mental well-being, your overall development throughout your lifespan. So, as a sports psychologist, we try and answer two main questions. So, what is the impact of your performance on your mind? So, that is how winning, losing, or your success or failure impacts your well being. And the second question that we try and understand is how does your mindset impact your performance? So, that is while you're playing, what are your thoughts, what are your emotions that you're experiencing? How is that impacting your performance?
Okay, this is very interesting. Okay, let me dive a little bit deeper into this with you. How is this different from general psychology?
That's actually an interesting question. I get this question a lot. So it's different in a lot of ways. So I'll start with first. So general psychology basically focuses on helping individuals overcome their mental health challenges and then bring them back to the baseline functioning of their life. But as a sports psychology, my focus is completely different. I actually help individuals, specifically athletes, to actually come up from the basic baseline functioning and actually help them reach their highest potential. So that is, the focus is completely different from a general psychologist.
Oh, okay, very interesting. So in the first one, you're trying to get to normalcy. In this, you move from normalcy to high performance.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
So with that, we actually, our setups are also completely different. So if you would always see a clinical or a counseling psychologist working in a hospital, a clinic, or a school setup. Whereas as a sports psychologist, I'm always not within a room. I'm in fact always on field, on the competition venue, in their training venue. So it's always on a sports field. So that's another major difference that we have. And the third would be the confidentiality. So, like you know, a psychologist won't share anything that happens between the client and the psychologist from a session to anyone, other than if they are required to obviously present in the court. But in a sports psychologist actually would, I wouldn't say we would break confidentiality, but we would be required to share certain aspects of our sessions or certain information from our sessions to the coaches, to the management who's working with the athlete, to the team members or other SSM team members, that is like the nutritionists, the physiotherapists, so that they can work better with the athlete. So obviously this happens with the consent of the athlete, but we do share certain information.
So your
from our
input
sessions.
goes to an entire support system.
Yes.
Okay, nice. So what are some of the key mental skills that you work on when you work with somebody?
So the mental skills that we use, we call it as the umbrella term, like the basic psychological skills that we use with athletes are visualization or mental imagery, goal setting, self-talk, a lot of relaxation activities. So how we would use this, so for example, like we want the athlete to perform at a optimal arousal level. So that is, you don't want the athlete to be very excited, or you don't want the athlete to be very calm as well. So as a sports psychologist, we would try and first learn what is the optimal arousal level for that individual athlete. Once we've understood that, for example, that athlete now performs really well when the athlete feels excited. So how is it that before a competition we are going to reach that excitement level every time in various setups? So for example, we would use a imagery setup where we would maybe help the athlete visualize their past performance where they've done really well. So that would then induce the feelings of motivation, induce the feeling of I did well and I can do well now again. Or for example, if one of the athlete likes to perform or performs the best when they feel extremely calm, then we would use various breathing exercises, or we would again use imagery, but that would be a relaxing imagery. So we would then help athletes imagine that they are at a very relaxing, calm place, and then bring down their heartbeat so that they can perform better in that situation. Now, the other example would be if we are helping an athlete who is undergoing injury rehabilitation. So, like during the injury phase, the athlete actually does not perform or is not allowed to do a lot of physical activities because of the injury. So, I mean, we have multiple roles, right? As individuals, I play multiple roles. So I identify myself in multiple roles. But for an athlete, they only identify themselves from their athletic identity. And during the injury phase, the athletic identity is actually taken away from them. So they experience multiple things while they're injured. So as a sports psychologist, then I would help the athlete stay in touch with the sport. So I could do a lot of imagery with them during that phase. So I would include a lot of shadow practice. That is, you're not actually doing the entire routine, but you're just trying and moving your hands and just doing a shadow practice. With that, I would include imagery. So then I would help athlete go through the entire routine. So if it's a swimmer, then we would go through their dry land exercises. I would cue them that imagine that you're at the pool side, you're doing your warm up, you are doing all your exercises. So this is how we use.
So what I'm really getting is that it's actually in the mind. Performance is in the mind.
I mean, you could say so, because I mean, if you compare the world number 1 or world number 2 in any sport, physical abilities are almost going to be the same at par, right? It's not going to be like a 20-10 difference. It's going to be either 19-20 or they're going to be at par. So what is it that's going to give them edge? Their mindset that day.
It's all here. Okay, so Jenny, I think we've understood what sports psychology is about, but now we come to children, right? So, and at Brainology, we are specifically interested in how children are learning and developing. How can sports psychology help children recover from failure?
Okay, so if sports psychology is essentially what? It's performance psychology, right? Failure is also related to performance. So as a sports psychologist, we do a lot of performance psychology work. So for an athlete, for a child who's playing or who's not playing, failure, success is all related to the performance. So we use the principles from sports psychology and we derive it and help the athlete. So basically, the base is going to be performance psychology, but the examples that we use are going to be very different for an athlete, for a child. So I'll give you an example how we view failure in sports. It's viewed very differently. For a child, if the child doesn't do well in an exam or the child fails, I mean, failure is just you either pass or you fail. But in sport, failure is never like you either do or do not. So let's take in any sport that you play or any game that you play, there's always going to be 50% chance of winning and 50% chance of losing. So basically, winning and losing are part and parcel of sport. So we actually encourage our athletes to move forward despite of that missed goal, despite of that unfinished attack, despite of that missed point that you've lost. So when we are working with a child, we encourage them in the similar fashion, that it's okay if you've not achieved what you had set goals for. You can still do. There's so much more you can still do despite of not fulfilling that one goal that you had set out to achieve.
Pretty much a life lesson. So my next question, Jenny, I'm curious. Are challenges of academics similar to challenges of sports? I'm just reflecting on what you've just said. Exam anxiety, procrastination, all these are challenges in academics. Similar challenges in sports?
I would say yes. I mean, in the end, the two worlds are different, but in both the worlds, the student or the athlete is required to perform. So the performance anxiety a child would experience before an exam would be very similar to performance anxiety an athlete would experience before a competition. So yes, I would say that both the worlds do have certain similarities in the experiences that the individual goes through.
So therefore, the tools that you learn in sports psychology, can you extrapolate to improve your performance elsewhere in life?
Absolutely, yes. So not just, definitely there are a lot of tools that you can use it and apply it in your day-to-day life. So what are we working on, right? With an athlete, we help them enhance their concentration. Now, a good focus, or while you're doing your work in the corporate world
academics as well,
or in academics, you want your child to sit in a place and do some focused work. So what I'm teaching to the athletes, I can actually teach that to
it's a transferable skill.
In fact, if you've seen, there are a lot of student athletes. So what is student athletes? Basically, they are studying and they are playing a sport while they are still in their school or college days, while they are still pursuing their academics. So you will see a lot of student athletes actually outperform or do well in both academics and sport. That is because they are using what they are learning from sports or from sports psychology and applying that to academics.
Very interesting. So, padhoge, likhoge, banoge nawab. No, sports is an important skill.
Absolutely.
Jenny, what advice would you give to students and children who may be struggling with motivation? And we see this in both areas. We see motivation issues in sports also, and we see it in academics also.
Yes. So I think one of the major reasons why we see lack of motivation, or you start an activity with a lot of excitement, but midway or just after you start, you lose the motivation to finish that task. So the reason, the problem here I see is that a lot of times athletes or students, they set outcome related goals. So instead of setting process related goals, so what is outcome? Like in an exam, I want 80% or I want 90%, and they start studying. But midway they realize that the portion is too much, I won't be able to finish the portion in time, and my goal that was 90%, I won't be able to fulfill that goal. So there's an immediate feeling of dejection and disappointment, and then they're altogether not motivated to study. That's because they have set a outcome related goal, but at the same time, if they would have set a process oriented goal, that my goal is to finish this chapter, understand the concepts of biology. If they're studying biology, I want to just understand the concepts and try and just excel in the understanding so that I remember these concepts. They are going to be far more motivated to study and pursue that goal for a long period of time. So they won't lose their motivation just before the exams or before they finish the task, because they're constantly in the loop of process, and that can be updated every time that can be updated with time.
So फल की चिंता नहीं.
हाँ, फल की चिंता नहीं, मेहनत करो, फल की चिंता मत करो.
Okay, are there any exercises or habits you would recommend for these children?
Yes, so how Surya Namaskar is considered for exercise, I would say box breathing for sports psychology, or box breathing. for a mental exercise.
In, hold, out,
Yes.
hold.
So box breathing is essentially 4 seconds inhale, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds exhale, and 4 seconds hold. And you repeat this cycle every day for 10 to 12 times. No one's asking you to sit for like 10 minutes, do your meditation or
So
breath
what does
work.
this do?
Box breathing helps in multiple ways. So one, it helps you to control your breath pattern. So you are training yourself. So if before an exam or before any important activity or a task, we do not realize, but a breathing pattern changes. So if we are actually practicing some kind of breathing exercise, one, we learn to assess when there are changes. So we are more informed, or we become more aware of when there are changes in our breathing pattern. And if there are changes in our breathing pattern, we can immediately control our breathing pattern because we know how to do that, right? Two, if you see any newborn baby, you'll always see while they're breathing, the stomach will go up and down. So that's basically belly breathing. So we actually, when we are born, we actually practice belly breathing. But as and when with the busy lives, with our busy lives, our breathing pattern changes, and we start practicing fast breathing. That is the chest breathing, or right. So if I ask anyone to take a deep breath, this is like the common movement or the common way in which any athlete or a student would do deep breathing. So then we are actually making them unlearn that, and then again go back to the belly breathing the way we are born. So that helps in multiple ways. One, we are inhaling more oxygen. So more oxygen means more benefits. We are helping them bring them their heart rate. So breathing helps you in multiple ways. Okay. And box breathing is a pretty simple exercise to do.
It is. So what's a common myth or misconception that people have about mental performance?
So I would say people see mental sports psychology or as when you have a problem, you go and approach a sports psychologist. But it's actually not true, because our main focus is to actually help athlete elevate their performance, right? So you can also work with a sports psychologist even when you don't have a problem, because all you're doing is just elevating your performance. It's a simple example. Do we stop going to the gym once we've built strength? No, we keep going even when we are at a peak strength to maintain it. It's the same logic that applies to mental performance or sports psychology as well.
It's basically a life skill that you keep practicing.
Practicing, yes.
So Jenny, what's the advice for parents? And I think I know what's coming, parents, because I discussed this with her. So, hold back and take some hard feedback.
So, actually strongly recommend parents to not associate each and every activity that they do with the need to excel in that activity. So, while I understand focused approach or focused learning helps you grow, but each and every activity or exercise or task or exam does not need to be associated with excelling or doing well or progressing. You can just do the activity to learn. So, obsessing over progress sometimes can be really harmful as well. So I feel really sad actually when a 12-year-old athlete comes to me and in a session talks to me about feeling guilty because they've lost one match. So a 12-year-old shouldn't be feeling guilty about losing, right?
And what essentially we are saying here is that the child is feeling guilty because they feel that they have failed their parent.
Yes. They fail their parents because those are the kinds of expectations that are built around them, right? So if a parent can always appreciate the efforts that an athlete is putting or their child is putting, instead of appreciating the wins or the marks or the progress they're making.
And there is a lot of, oh my gosh, I've put a lot of money, a lot of investment behind this endeavor, and therefore I do want to see some output where my child is winning something or on a stage or a platform somewhere, right? I think there is maybe that pressure.
So I understand from where this is coming. Like the parent puts a lot of time, effort, and invests a lot of money. But if we constantly keep obsessing over progress, or we constantly keep thinking only about excelling
Outcome.
or outcome, the child is actually forming negative associations with the task. Like if they don't win, they are not worthy of the task, or if they don't win, they are not worthy, they are not they're useless, or if they can't excel, they're not doing well, they don't have any skill set. So you are actually priming or setting up your kid for
failure, perhaps.
So you want the kid to be resilient, because come on, in life you're always going to fail at least once.
You have to take that failure.
So that's
on
the hard
chin.
truth, right? You're not going to excel always. Have you excelled always in all your activities, or everything that you've taken up? Not really, right? So it's very unfair to teach that to the kids, or associate every activity with excelling.
So we should hold our horses and be mindful of the kind of feedback we give to our child. So Jaini, thank you so much. A very insightful session, parents. End of our session today. I loved it. You can also follow us on our Instagram handle Brainology1 to get details on other episodes, and get our book on Amazon, A Kid's Guide to Money. We bring you more such insightful, interesting and useful podcasts only on Homework Hustle. So keep hustling.